Hello, and welcome to the Happy Debating Atheist. I am Brentley, and here with me, I have some guests today. I have Sabrina and Kevin from Left at the Valley. How y'all doing?
I protest. I protest. I did not come here under my own volition, okay? Brent Lee's got some naked pictures of me, and he's holding me hostage at this point. If you understand and you get this message, let the police know, please.
Well,
Really, I thought you were just protesting that he said my name first.
you know how this goes, y'all. We're not supposed to believe victims of this stuff. That's the way this works. You don't believe people when they make claims like that. Okay. So, I'm just kidding. You should believe claims like that. Not when they come from Kevin, though. That's the thing. If they come from a woman, you can do it, but not Kevin.
Brent is regretting every interaction he ever had with us at this point right now. We apologize to his audience in advance. Hello there in cyber world.
Yes, we are. Yeah. So what's going on, y'all? How you feeling?
Not much. What's going on? You told us that you summoned us, and you want to talk about debating. First of all, I am not going to argue with you.
Well, then you don't get the premise of the show. I mean, we're supposed to debate stuff. That's the whole thing. So tell me something that's stupid that you believe. Come on.
Oh, where to start?
How long do we have?
Well, maybe we can talk about the whole debating point to begin with. Is debating worth it? Is it really efficient? Does it really convey an idea? Does it explain your position properly?
Does it change anyone's mind?
Exactly. Does it change anyone's mind?
That is the ultimate question, and I think I don't think we're I don't think anybody's figured out that question yet. Honestly, I mean, Matt Dillahunty still has debates about slavery.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, you have to. Do we as a species, are we evolved enough as a species to actually have a nice form of discussion of ideas, or are we just simply screaming in the void, hoping somewhere that our voice is going to be louder than the guy next door? Those are excellent questions, and you know what? I will say, for the most part, it seems to be answered. I see a lot of debate shows out there. I mean, you see. Just watch a Jerry Springer episode.
Right? Yeah.
He's exactly that and everything, right? It's just about the person who's loudest, to get the last word in. And it's really just...
Or, if you're tired of Jerry Springer, you can always listen to the Right to Reason podcast starring Robert Stanley. You get almost the same... You get almost the same shit.
Yeah, but the Right to Reason podcast has more smut and nudity, so I'm not sure. It's not quite as classy as the Jerry Springer show. So, jeez, he's gonna.
Well,
it's only supposed to be next week.
I was going to say.
Accurate. Yes, that is. That's true. I mean, even Jerry Springer had some standards. You know what I'm saying? Like, just kidding. We love you, Robert. It's great.
Robert Drake, the consummate professional. I love what he does for his job there, and I was not forced to say that.
No, I always have fun on his show. I swear I've been on it like 20 times or so. I don't even know.
Brent, I would say from the fact that you're making this kind of show, you probably do think that debate is actually worthwhile, right?
I mean, the nature
of your show.
I think that so as far as like changing anybody's mind, I don't know as far as that goes, but I think that people presenting arguments and hearing the interaction between two people is always educational because everybody's going to talk about what is convincing to them. You know what I mean? And so they're going to bring different arguments and stuff and like do different metaphors and make you think about things in a different way that is convincing to them. And I find that very useful.
Have debates ever changed your mind?
Not necessarily changed my mind, but they've helped me, like, have better arguments and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you've essentially just picked up ammo from an opinion that you already had. So
Kinda,
you just
yeah.
Yeah,
But it
reinforced your
helped
own
broaden
points.
my understanding of topics as well. So, I mean, it has, like, helped in that regard. Like, it's you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, "Oh, I never thought about it that way," with this whatever it was, argument about, like, say, like, uh, being absolutely certain or something like that with solipsism and whatnot, stuff like that, it's like, "Oh, man, I never thought about," you know, just those type of arguments. Like you're like, oh no, and now I can basically say, no, I have certain confidence levels that match, that directly comport with the amount of evidence that demonstrates that this proposition is actually accurate. And things like
So
that. Just like ways to explain things better and in a quick way.
So is it accurate to say that really you haven't been convinced yourself that debate is efficient? All it's done is essentially giving you a sharper stick when you make your point.
Yes, I would say that. Yeah, absolutely.
So really, when you're debating, you're essentially just trying to assume a permanent form of dominance over the next guy. It's a guy with a bigger club with a sharper stick.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, I think that you should always be thinking of different ways to say things, you know what I mean? And think of things different, from different directions and whatnot, and to kind of keep the interlocutor on their toes, and then the audience going, "Oh man, I never thought about it from like that," like using that metaphor or whatever it is.
Yeah, and sometimes I really wonder, to play devil's advocate, if really there is such a point, if there is a point to debate, because I think people rarely change their mind. They'll basically say, "Well, Jim's got a good opinion there, but I still think X is correct." And all I've got now is I'm better prepared for an attack, or I've got a better defense, or I've got a better attack myself.
Or I give up and I'm not going to argue anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
And they kind of concede defeat in that way, but they don't necessarily change their mind.
Are we smart enough as a species to actually be capable of actual nice debate and admitting that we're wrong when we are? I don't know we're there. And I think we can see that very clearly, especially in our politics.
Yeah.
I mean, as Canadians, we have a tendency to watch a lot of what happens in the States.
Our politics is far too boring.
Yeah, of course. But you want to see clearly.
Quite entertaining down here.
Think of what you guys just went through with your ex-president, 45 Donald Trump.
But how is that a debate?
I mean, you could bring all the argument and all the points and all the data
And
to
he
a
would just
person.
change the subject.
No, not him himself, to his followers.
Yeah.
And they won't listen.
Yeah.
They just won't listen.
It doesn't matter what
It doesn't matter what you say to them.
Yeah, you're right.
That's true.
Because he pulls over them much louder and just says whatever it is that he wants his followers to hear. And so that's all they hear because they're literally worshiping him.
At this point, I guess, does it become that, are we too, because I find that a lot of these, to stay with the Donald Trump example there, it's an emotional response, right?
Yeah.
So are we too emotional as a species and not intellectual enough to debate properly?
That's a good question. I think for a lot of people that is the case because they do answer in a way that's completely emotionally driven. You know what I mean?
I want to point out that being emotional as a species is not necessarily a bad thing, right? I'm not saying emotion is bad and intellectual is good here.
Right.
I'm just saying that this is the reality that as a species, we're a species with emotions, and they often get the best of us.
Right.
And would we be different if we were all like falcons? If we were all like simple logic and everything like that, would we then be able to debate?
Maybe, but I feel like because a lot of times, I feel like I'm debating with people that are trying to be Vulcans. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to be completely logical and they're forgetting emotions exist. And I'm just like, dude, you have to implement the fact that we're emotional beings into your logic. Because if you're not, then you're just ignoring evidence and you might as well be a flat earther at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
there's a lot of atheists out there that'll say, for example, that you can't reason somebody out of a point. You can't reason people into knowledge. And some atheists will say the opposite. Will say, no, I used to be a theist. Now I'm an atheist. I was reasoned into atheism. Were you actually reasoned into atheism, or did simply atheism, or I should say theism, did not satisfy your emotional need anymore? Did you grow up on theism?
Well,
Was it simply because you could find an emotional attachment to a divine being, therefore the intellect took over?
Always question your faith and then realize that whatever you were hearing from the atheist was always what actually made the most sense.
Yeah, but it's also because, especially when you're dealing with Christians or any form of theism, it can, just like politics, it's an emotional response.
Absolutely.
right.
They don't want Jesus to be false. They don't want Buddha to not exist. They don't want Allah to not be the answer. It's an emotional response, and I think the psychology of it is much more fascinating than just the debate side of it itself.
Were you, Kevin? Were you ever a theist?
Oh God, yes. I was raised Catholic.
You were raised Catholic. Okay. What was it that coaxed you out of your belief in that?
Okay. I was raised Catholic, and to be quite honest, my mother, she's still guilty as hell Catholic woman, so she's always feeling guilty and everything. And she actually thought I would actually become a priest. Boy, was she wrong on that one. And what actually got me, the first time I actually started, because my brother used to have like this nice little illustrated Bible, and they had the a story per page, right? I remember that book very well, actually. And I read that book cover to cover like twice. And it had like really nice drawings, and it was like almost like a Renaissance paintings.
Yeah.
Of one of my favorite stories
I
was
had a similar Bible, but not as detailed.
Samson the Judge and all that. So one of my, I always like that kind of story. It was great stories, and it was like the stuff from mythology. But then my parents were telling me it was real as well. So hey, you're dealing like with Superman there, and this guy that just splits the river in two, and holy crap, this is cool stuff, right? I mean, of course, it's a very tame version of the Bible, designed for kids. But my first foray, if you wish, into apostasy happened around in my early teens, because my mom used to always drag us to church every Sunday, and it was one of those, nobody likes to go to church, right?
No,
especially when you're a kid.
You don't.
Right? You wear that itchy sweater you never liked, and you're in church, and I can remember sitting and just like trying to, pass the time, come on, clock, move forward, and the Catholic Church was. The church I was in was so robotic. This is what I noticed, right? All of a sudden, they're sitting, they're kneeling, they're standing, they're singing the hymn, they're sitting, it's like, and then I was listening to the hymns, and I was listening to the song, and I was looking around as everybody's got their nose in their book and reading the lines there, and I'm looking around at these people, and I'm thinking, where's the passion? If you guys actually believe in this, where's the love? I could not feel any of it, right? I could not feel the passion of it. And then it just struck me. I said, oh my God, these people don't actually believe this. And that was my first, for lack of a better term, revelation into this nonsense.
Yeah.
It took quite a while. I mean, even then, at that point, I realized that the whole Jesus thing was kind of getting fishy, although I hadn't delved deep into it. And then around my 18th birthday, I remember I was doing martial arts and I was meditating, and I had this dream or vision, or call it what you want, of a dusty old Bible, and the thing shattered like glass. And that's when I opened my eyes and I said, I don't believe this. I don't believe any of it. I still, at that point, I was still consider myself a theist, because I don't believe in Jesus, but I still thought there had to be a force there. Something, right? A grand poobah, that kind of a force of good versus evil kind of thing. Right? There had to be like yin and yang or something. So that's where you fall into nebulous theism, pantheism, that kind of stuff.
So yeah, so more like a pantheist version of it, where you're just like, I don't know, the universe is God, whatever.
Yeah, something like that. energy and love and that kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
So it's only actually once I was actually here in BC, and then I actually start,
See, you did it. You're pronouncing it wrong. It's DC, Washington D.C. Oh shit! Wait, no, you guys are in.
We
Yeah.
have to verify,
Canada.
I've heard
Fuck.
that people don't know outside of Canada what BC really means.
Really? Okay. Well, for those for your audience,
Thank you.
we're coming out of close to Vancouver, British Columbia,
Yeah.
BC.
We're close to the 2010 Olympics.
Yeah, so we're on the Pacific Northwest here. So we're just above Seattle, essentially. So to give you an idea where we are.
Oh.
For your American audience, I might know where we are right now. So.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't know. I didn't. I'm not good with geography or history. Apparently, I'm pretty bad at all this. Just facts in general of the normal things that people learn when they grow up.
Yeah. So it's only
Anyway.
once I was in BC that I started finding videos of Christopher Hitchens. I saw, which is the irony, because we're discussing this tonight, was actually a debate with Christopher Hitchens, and I was so struck by how eloquent and how fearless he was, and how he's just destroying with facts. And I'm thinking, even then, it was not the conviction of the facts, but it was the emotional response to the debater himself. The fact that he was so certain of himself, so fearless. It did, and it expanded my horizon base. This is what after that I found about Richard Dawkins and eventually Seth Andrews and all that stuff, and eventually this guy called Brentley. So
that's me.
But
you were in your 20s, then, you're saying, when you actually fully became a true atheist?
No, I would say in my late 30s. I was actually kind of a late bloomer.
You were? Wow.
Wow. See, yeah, me too.
That's why I didn't meet you.
For the longest time, and I will fully admit this, for the longest time, to my great shame, I was one of those guys, the pyramids might have a significance, the alignment of this and that Bigfoot, that, and UFOs here for the longest time.
So similar to, yeah,
So no skepticism, basically. No skepticism. Just I don't know, sounds good.
Well,
sounds plausible.
Skepticism, lack of skepticism is usually informed by your ignorance. I mean, UFOs and aliens sound extremely plausible unless you know about physics. Right? Unless you know that you can't go past the speed of light, and wormholes are not really, you can really manifest with a beam of neutrinos or something like that. And the closest star is 4 light years away. If you don't know these things, then aliens traveling in spaceship and visiting here becomes very plausible. Because I was looking at, remember when we were kids, there was a show called Mutual of Omaha, Wild Kingdom?
Yeah, Wild Kingdom. Yeah, I remember that.
It's a very old show. For the older member of the audience, it was one of those shows of conservationists. They're in helicopters, they got rhinos, and they're shooting a rhino with a dart, and then they get on the ground, they measure, and they talk about the rhino. It was like...
I stayed away from those shows because sometimes they showed animals killing animals, and it hurt me,
they
so
did.
I wouldn't watch it.
They loved that, yeah.
And my theory at the time was, this is what we do with animals. We shoot them, we tranquilize them, we measure them, clean their wound, and we tag them, and then we say, okay, we inventory the animal, if you wish, put him on the chart, and release him back into the wild. So it was very plausible for me that an alien species could be doing that to us.
I can buy that.
Yeah, why wouldn't an animal species just pick, Brent's on the side of the road, they're buying selfies, park on the back, tranquilize him, bring him on board, clean his wound, probe him,
and stick him back in
put a tag on
There
him,
you go.
and release him back into the wild.
And then 5 hours has passed and he has no idea where he's been, where he's gone, and all those stories you've heard in the 80s and 90s make sense.
Exactly, right? So imagine the rhino that's been tranquilized by a helicopter. How does he explain that to his rhino buddies? Right? The same way, we would explain it the same way a UFO encounter would happen.
It's I don't know, this giant firefly just came down, right?
On my head, and I'm running away, and it's coming after me. And then all of a sudden, I'm paralyzed. I fall to the floor, and all of a sudden, these creatures are on me, and they're pointing and probing on me. And then they release me back. Nobody believes me now.
all around. It's like, you're full of shit. Whatever, dude. Let's eat some
Exactly.
grass. Or whatever
Rhino's
we
been
eat.
microchipped.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's one crazy rhino that says, "Man, Bill Gates has got a microchip in you," right?
Yeah.
But in the funny laughter way that we actually look at that, for somebody who does not know a lot about science, it's totally plausible. And that's the attraction to everything that's conspiracy theory. It's the
There's always plausibility in a
Exactly.
conspiracy theory. If
Yeah.
there wasn't plausibility, you wouldn't have believers. So it has to have some grain of, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but it's plausibility that's based off of a lot of lack of understanding the way things have worked, just like you were just saying. Like, you know, a lot of the plausibility behind like the Illuminati or something is the fact that there's these wealthy people, you know, that can control everything. In theory, that technically could be true. You know, if these people were capable of working together at such a fucking elaborate pace, you know what I mean, like, and able to do all these things. But it's just such bullshit, because they know they won't, they
Well,
refuse to.
well,
They're screwing each other over all the time. Like, that's their whole jam, is fuck you, I'm taking care of me, you know.
But once in a while you get a story. Remember when George W. Bush was president? And then they started talking about how George W. Bush was a member of the Skull and Bones.
Mhm.
Yes,
Right?
Yeah, it's like the fraternity
secret
movie.
that they had in university.
I was sort of into conspiracy theories around this time.
But
This sounds about right.
if you look up the whole Skulls and Bones things, which is kind of a real thing, it
Mhm.
is a secret society. It is a real thing, and it's something that nobody knew about. So if Skull and Bones can be real, the Illuminati is not that much of a farther step. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, they get Skull and Bone, and he's the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. How much of a step is it for somebody to be part of the Illuminati and in charge of the world? It's not that drastic of a step when you have the president of the United States already being a member of something that already exists.
Right.
It's not that big of a step. So I understand these conspiracy theories. I totally get it. And and then we come in and say, "Oh no, this is just bullshit." I say, "Why?" They would go, "Why is it bullshit?"
Yeah.
Right?
And we have really no answer to why it is. So
why would a guy like George W. Bush, an unremarkable man, he's not brilliant, he's not, he's got some money, he comes from a rich family, but he's really unremarkable, end up president of the United States? Well, maybe the Skulls and Bones him, right?
Yeah.
And if you do that, then how hard is it to believe that somebody in the Illuminati, it's even bigger than the Skulls and Bones?
Yeah, it takes it out. It basically takes it out of the college fraternity thing, which is supposed to like vet. It basically is a vetting tactic to get, like, you know, only people that are like the type of people we want, you know, into this thing, right? And then it moves it out from the college setting and puts it into like reality, right? Where it's like,
absolutely,
you know, into
and of course,
this.
do fraternities really go that far into life after school, the way they show on TV? Like,
well, I can tell you,
does it just kind of end when you finish school?
I could tell you, but I have to kill you.
All right.
Well, I think, yeah, I don't know. I think that they definitely. I think that those type of things do exist. Don't get me wrong. Some exclusive club for just like the most wealthy people, for sure. You know, but are they able to control the world and make fake events happen and all this other stuff? No, none of that. You know, that's absurd.
What do you mean by fake event? Like that Sandy Hook theory thing?
No, the moon landing.
Oh, the moon landing.
The moon landing. There you go.
Yeah.
Like, it's all fake.
And like what do they call them? False flags.
The false flags are constant. Yeah.
False flag is another very interesting, interesting thing, because false flag is the concept of the government is actually doing these events to get the population to go out and actually be for war or something like that, or scare them
to control the population,
to get them convinced of something.
But we actually have real life historical accounts of the government doing exactly that. Right, like the invasion of Cuba, the Bay of Pigs, and stuff. These are real. So how far fetched is it for them to go? Well, they did the Bay of Pigs, and now 30 years later they're trying 9/11 or whatever. You
Yeah.
know, is it really that far fetched? No, it's not in their mind, and I understand that.
Not necessarily. Like, I mean, it's plausible. Like we were just saying, the plausibility is actually
Yeah.
there, you know.
Yeah.
But it's the demonstration that these things are actually true with any kind of empirical evidence, and being able
Yeah.
to, you know, and all these people to be quiet, all these people to not speak up. I mean,
Yeah,
that's just unreasonable, you know,
I
to
totally understand that, and I agree with you, Brent. But let me play devil's advocate here in another moment. We went from a place that an historical event that happened to a possible conspiracy theory. Okay, now we see that how there's a simple jump from one to the other, and they're not that different. And I think we kind of agree that. Now add to that popular culture. Add to that all the movies you've seen, with all the conspiracies,
Yep.
all the bad guys, all the James Bond-esque
Oh,
villains in the
yeah.
background. Is it really that surprising then that people are just mesmerized by that
No, not
and
at
think
all.
of it as possible?
No.
I don't think so. This is a monster of our own making,
yeah.
of our overactive imagination, and this is the price we're paying for today.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and not that I don't think that things like that shouldn't exist, you know, like those the media and stuff and the fun, you know, the fun movies and stuff like that, but you know, the fact that people can map it to reality and then think that they're making all these connections because that's what the character of a movie did, you
Yeah.
know, is you know, and like you said, like it's I get why people do it, but it's like that's a fucking movie, bro. Like you're not.
Yeah, but there's some real consequences. I mean, in the States, I'm going to make a comparison with Canada and the States again. How many times in the States, how many of your audience right now is kind of reacting to the idea of socialism, right?
Mm.
Socialism, the evil monster. Socialism, the red communist coming to get you.
Yeah.
We know it's not true. But when you have somebody like Ronald Reagan that spent 50 years saying it, and he was
Yeah.
president of the United States at some point, you know
Oh, yeah.
what? You know, people start believing it.
It's
And
the
you have every
repetition.
news channel on the right wing today doing the same thing, repeating the same dance. And this is the fear of socialism is the only reason the United States does not have medical care system, medical health care
Yeah,
system.
universal health care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the only reason.
Because
It's
they're
not
so
because
scared.
State universal health care. I don't know how you feel about that, though, Brent.
Oh no, I'm totally for Medicare for all, for sure. Absolutely.
Darn.
Yeah,
I
single
think-
payer
I think
system, whatever you want to call it.
I think we get a good conversation going there because it encompasses everything in life, everything that we do on Left of the Valley, everything that Brent does on the show. It all ties in together
Absolutely.
because that's what life is essentially, right? I believe it's Rudyard Kipling that said life is a spinning wheel and each spoke a tale to be told, right? So it's exactly that. And all these people going out there debating and trying to just prove that their little corner is true. And we come in, you know, I hate to say it, but sometimes in the atheist community, we kind of come in arrogantly and say,
Yeah.
come on, of course it's bullshit because X. And
Right.
that's not going to be emotionally.
It will not be well received.
It won't be received well, and it won't be convincing them on an emotional level because these people are often reacting to fear. You're not going to calm them down by saying, "No, of course UFOs don't exist. You can't. That's stupid." That's not going to calm them down.
No,
That's not going to calm
this
down
is
their
going to
fear.
anger them further.
You know, it's a bit like saying to your kid, "Oh, of course the monster under your bed's not there. Let's go take a look." And you go take a look under your bed, and the kid sees the monster's not there, but the kid still believes the monster is somehow.
It's like
Right?
he can disappear. He can disappear and reappear. Okay, you don't understand the way monsters work. Right.
Yes. And as atheists, we face the same problem when we're dealing with Christians because we're trying to say, no, your God doesn't meet the criteria, doesn't fit the fact, but they just change the goalpost. Of course, he's just supernatural. He's outside of time and space. That's why we can't touch him.
Yeah.
That's why we can't see him.
He can disappear.
Exactly.
For good.
He's God. He's all powerful. You know, so we can just. And I love that there's this lovely saying when we talked about gods. They used to say gods used to live in caves until we visited the caves and realized there was nothing there. Then they were on top of the mountain. Then until we climbed the mountain. Then they were in the clouds. Then when we start to fly and go into space, now they're beyond time and space. So one step ahead of us.
Yeah.
That's where gods are.
We'll never catch them.
They're
never catch
moving, man. They're movers. They're shakers and movers, man. Like they can just they can just move from one spot to another. Like that's just
Yeah.
they were in the caves and then they disappeared. Clearly, because you were there trying to see if they were there. I mean, it's obvious.
I feel that facts and knowledge will give you the great weapons to defend your point, but I think psychology is where your main battering ram is to break down your opponent. Understanding the psychology of what makes him or her tick,
Yeah.
and how can he or she change their mind is really resides with psychology.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I've watched you
I'd agree.
with difficult people, and it's interesting to watch you approach.
I thought I was a difficult person.
No, you can be, but when you're approaching somebody,
That he is. Like, full stop.
in something, the way you approach the argument is interesting
Really?
and fun to watch in person. I must admit.
Okay.
And I'd like to.
This is not an invitation to debate me, by the way. Okay?
No.
Just want to be clear here. I'm not in a debate.
Well, you instead of presenting an argument, you'll often ask them to defend their own argument,
Yes.
and it's fun to watch people squirm.
Well, this what I'm doing there, and people will recognize that really quickly, especially amongst your audience, Brent, is essentially epistemology, right?
Right.
You're basically asking people, walk me through the steps and how you got to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Right.
In the hopes that these people start to realize that even their own words don't make sense after a while. They have to make that jump themselves.
Yeah.
Because if you just tell them they're wrong, it's just not good enough.
Yeah, because they'll always go back to like, well, you just gotta have faith, or you basically you just gotta believe it to believe it. And it's like
exactly.
basically just tell me I'm right. Just come on. Just do it. Just believe it. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot of times that's how I feel when people are like, hey, you gotta have faith. It's like, just believe it. Come on. Quit being a dick. Just fucking tell me I'm right. It's like,
years ago, I was talking to a professor in philosophy. No, I'm not one who studied philosophy. I don't know much about philosophy. But I asked, is it possible that maybe as a species, one of the greatest joys that we have on an emotional level is being correct, right? It's great to realize that, you've solved a puzzle. Eureka, you're correct on this. You've got the answer to the quiz or whatever. So if this is one of the greatest joys that we have, then maybe one of the greatest sorrows that we have would be to be wrong. And sometimes I feel that sometimes it's such a sorrow that we are willing to lie to ourselves and to just put our shield up and say, there is no fucking way in hell I can be wrong, because I don't want that emotional trauma, for lack of a better term, to come to me to realize I'm wrong.
It is traumatic. It is traumatic to realize you're wrong.
It takes an incredible level of maturity to basically say, God damn, I was wrong.
Right.
It really does. It really does. Nobody wants, no matter what the argument, you're arguing with your wife, with your husband, with your kids, doesn't matter. Somebody comes in and just shows you the fact, people will sometimes double down. This is in every aspect of our life, from the debate between atheists and atheists to just debating with your kids.
Right.
Any aspect of your life. The parent, and of course, there's some quote unquote politics that come into to play with that too, right? If you take the parent between a parent and a child and an adult, often you'll have too many adults saying you can't show weakness, you can't show fear, you can't show that you're wrong in front of your child, because then they take over or something like that. I've heard that from my own parents.
They'll begin to doubt that you know everything.
Exactly. And if I can remember debating my mother when I was like very, very young, and when I proved her wrong, she just changed the goalpost. But of course, I was too young to understand what she was doing.
Right.
But,
See, yeah.
I was an adult, I understand what she was doing, but it's like, Jesus Christ, couldn't you just admit that, you know what? you know what, Kevin? I'm sorry, I was wrong. Apparently, you were right. That was too much for her to do.
No,
That
that
was
would take
just too much for her to do, right?
and because that's such an honest thing to do, and it's such a human thing to do, and I think it's like recognizing each of us as being that level of human of going, "Oh man, I could be mistaken." And, like, you're right, like, that we and I feel like it's, in America, at least specifically, like, we're this way with politics, and it's really weird that, like, we
Oh
all
yeah,
act like we understand politics to a level that and it's just like, we don't though. You know, we don't
no,
understand
no,
I mean, it's such a complicated thing. I mean, you're talking about socioeconomic, like, situations and whatnot. Like, these things are complicated, you know, and it's okay to be like, "That shit's too complicated. I just know this." You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I just feel like this is the right way, you know, and we just but we in America, like, we just won't do it. We just have to pretend like we got all the answers and we know
hmm
when it comes to because we're all voting. And so it's almost like I feel like since we're all voting and it's democracy, we have to feel like we have to be able to defend our vote in a way that we're belligerently overestimating our intelligence on whatever the subject matter is.
hmm
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
As a Canadian, I find U.S. politics just absolutely fascinating. There's a lot of things I find just, I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing. Although our cultures are not that different. You know, I remember having a traveling. I used to travel to Washington State on a regular basis once a week for work. And I remember talking to one of my customers up there, and she was so angry at Barack Obama at the time because he had apologized for the United States. And it was like, how dare he apologize for the United States? And I was looking at her and said, well, how is that a bad thing? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
but she was so adamant that, you know, you should never apologize. Like the states could never do no wrong. Well, the states have done plenty of wrong. Like just about every country has done plenty of wrong.
Yeah.
You know, the states is no angel, and Canada's no angel either, right? I
No.
mean, there's some dark part of history on every country. So it was just amazing because my first thought was, well, you know, if it was your child that had done something really really wrong, you would want your child to be mature and apologize for punching little Billy in the face. But when it comes to your country, you don't want to show that kind of humanity. You just have to show like, no, you can't show no fear to the enemy or something. It's like,
Right.
and what's the fascination with the Americans trying to think they're the police of the world? What's the fascination with that?
Right,
That's
and
always a
it's like yeah, it's like and the whole Trump movement, I feel like moved nationalism, like that whole concept of
oh,
nationalism, it made it a person. You know what I mean? Like
oh
that
yeah,
whole like America can't do anything wrong. It embodied it into a human being who was doing
hmm
everything wrong all the time, and yet they couldn't see it and they weren't allowed to admit it, which is really weird, you know, and it almost reminds me of like Joseph Smith or something like that. When you if you talk to like a Mormon, you know, they'll sit there and tell you that like, no, Joseph Smith is fucking phenomenal. He's a great guy. He's just a perfect. He's a prophet. You know, he did everything right. You know,
hmm
while we know from history that he was exactly the opposite of that and a fucking terrible person. You know what I mean?
yeah, and of course, right there, Joseph Smith is a very good example. The Mormons will say right there that if Joseph Smith was a great guy, and if you think he wasn't a great guy, it's because people are trying to bring him down.
Yeah.
Right? There's a conspiracy that comes back there that no, people are trying. It's a bit like early Christianity, do the same thing, right? Oh no, everybody knew Jesus. They
Jesus.
just
Yeah.
erased all these writings that Jesus had miraculously, and they erased the whole history and Satan and all that. They just erased it all.
Yeah.
No, they didn't.
He's actually
But you know,
perfect, dude. Like he can't do anything wrong. Like it's like I feel like the same thing has happened with Trump, you know, where it's like, no, he can't do anything wrong, you know, or
yeah,
there's it's impossible to see it. And it's like I feel like a lot of it is almost what you were talking about with psychology, where you're just like, if somebody needs to believe something, if they need a proposition to be true, if they feel in their
hmm
heart that they need this to be true,
yeah. I
they're
mean,
gonna rationalize it like fucking hell, man.
I find it so funny because of course, here in Canada we see a lot of movies that come from Hollywood, obviously, and you can so point them out so quickly, because how many movies have you seen where America comes in and America saves the day. And, they're soldiers
America.
waiting for the- I mean, the entire world's got an army, but just America saves the day from the aliens.
Yeah.
Somehow,
That's
just
a
the
good point.
Americans. Just the Americans. Nobody else is there but the Americans.
Yeah.
At best, the other countries will be there as a sidekick. And then you'll have all these other serious movies, these spy thrillers, where you'll have the big boss man. He's doing something completely unethical, but he'll say to his subordinates, "Damn it, Johnson, you know full well what's out there waiting for us. And if we don't do these deadly program, you know full well the communists are going to win. You know full well we'll ruin the United States, and the whole world is going to go into chaos." And people absorb that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you ask anybody outside the United States, nobody cares about the U.S.
No.
The only time people care about the U.S. is when the U.S. says they're going to bomb somebody.
Right.
But the rest, do you think right now in Scandinavia they're talking about the U.S.? No. Do you think somewhere in Thailand right now they're thinking, "Oh my God, we better fly straight and have a good government, or the American troops are going to come here"? No, nobody thinks about the U.S.
Right.
But this myth that the U.S. has to be the police of the world, or else everything's going to fall into chaos, is so prevalent in American society that people believe it.
Yeah. Because it's all about them, and they're not emotionally intelligent enough to be able to go, okay, but what about, how does everybody else think about this sort of thing?
Well, I don't know if it's a question of emotionally intelligent. I mean, most Americans are just intelligent people, normal intelligent people. I just think that you guys are also a product of your own. And I don't mean to bash the U.S. much here, but your own failed educational system.
Yeah.
I mean, what's with the Pledge of Allegiance every day? What's with the
It's
number
creepy.
one USA, freedom, freedom, number one. The U.S. is far from the only country in the world with freedom. But if you talk to the average American, they would think that freedom only happens in the U.S. Nowhere else in the world. Everything else behind. As soon as you cross the border from the U.S., you're either still in Canada or you're behind the big red menace somewhere, the communists.
Yeah.
And now realize, never stopping to think for half a second there, that 1/3 of the American debt is owned by China. So it's kind of funny to see the capitalist angel actually owes money to the communist bad boy. What the hell? Nobody seems to think about that for half a second.
That created the China virus, So
Yeah, exactly.
they did it. It's their fault. So, I mean, just saying. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. But as far as emotional intelligence, I was saying, like, it's this concept of just being able to picture yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? And being able to step out of your own experience and really think about somebody else's. And Americans are fucking terrible at this.
I don't think it's just Americans. I think it's just a Western way of doing things. I mean, the idea that, how many times have you heard these commercials about little Timmy has to go, he's in Africa, and he has to walk 3 miles to pick up 2 barrels of water and bring it back to his village every day. Just doing that. I mean, we have water on tap anywhere in the house.
Right.
I mean, just the concept of that is almost mind-boggling to me. It's like it's not something I've never really had to do.
Yeah.
Aside from that one camping,
Something you don't think about.
We're all very privileged.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And anyone who tries to say that they're not privileged is just wrong.
Yeah. And it's all relative, I mean, so because we have we have poor people here that suffer and stuff like that, right? But I mean, it's nothing like that, you know what I mean? Because it's a completely different situation, and it's terrible, that they have to go through that.
Well, we've veered a long way from the original subject, but that's okay.
No, that's the point. That's good.
Doesn't it?
I think it's a very interesting discussion nonetheless.
So Kevin and Sabrina are from a show. What? Sorry. Go on. What?
I said we just take a oh no, I can't do it. Never mind.
It's late, y'all. No, but no. Kevin and Sabrina are from this show called Left at the Valley. I'm now introducing the show 45 minutes into the show that we're doing, and it's called Left at the Valley. 2.0 is it's actually a reboot of the critically acclaimed, by the way, Left at the Valley that won Best Canadian Podcast
Atheist.
last year?
And we have,
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's be
Atheist
specific.
podcast.
Get into Atheist podcast.
We would love to be.
Best podcast.
No.
Best Canadian podcast would be great, but there's like 3 of them anyway.
Hey, Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is hard to beat. That's tough. That was a contender.
That's not a that's not a game. But we did have some great competition on that show for that prize. I mean, we had Corey Johnson and oh Jesus, it's on the tip of my tongue now. You had the Life, the Universe, and everything else. You had Vice Rhino.
Oh my God!
Rhino. I know.
Holy
right?
shit! What about Shannon Q? Was she a contender?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the articles. I mean, you can still look it up. 2020 Canadian Atheist Award, and it was just like I just noticed the article out of the blue, and said, "Oh, look at that, we're nominated." That was great. I said, "Hey, that's great. We're with heavy hitters, right?"
Well, yeah, we were in the fucking nomination. That's good.
Yeah, 1 week down the road, it's like, "Oh, so we win." It's like, "What? We won?" Like, holy shit.
I really am that good.
No, God, no. But it was like, wow, this is just a fluke, right?
So far, everyone that I know that hasn't listened to it before, that has listened to the new shows, has had a lot of fun and is waiting patiently for it to launch into the mainstream.
That's because they're scared of you. That's not the same thing.
Not scary. Very innocent.
Yeah,
Nice.
of course not. You can hear the psycho sound. No, the show is wacky, and this is why we call Method Valley 2.0 now, because we had to stop the show last year, about this time of year actually, because one of our co-hosts, Nancy, was actually dying of cancer, and the whole COVID thing was happening at the same time. So we put the show on hiatus, and Nancy passed away in June last year after fighting bravely for lung cancer, which is so ironic because she never smoked a day in her life, but she still got lung cancer. So it was a blow. Everybody showed her a lot of love, and for a while there, with COVID and everything going on in my personal life, it was really touch and go whether or not I'd be able to relaunch the show. And so we have. Sabrina was kind enough to join me as well as you, Brent, on the show. Driving Force?
Yes, or was it Brent?
I think it's both. I think it's all 3 of us, really.
Well, I was kind of just like along for the ride because this is a lot of fun. But
well, okay, to be super honest, the driving force behind relaunching the show was actually the people, the listeners.
I'm glad to hear that,
because basically, I sent out a message, that if you guys want us to do the show again, let me know. And we were reached out by a lot of people. Reached out and basically said, we're sad to hear the show is done, and I had some messages every once in a while, people coming in and said, I was listening to your show and I'm listening, I'm checking every week to be sure did I miss out? Do you guys relaunch, or when are you guys coming back? So okay, well, if people are liking us, great. So let's face it, when you do podcasting, it's partly therapeutic anyway. So
yeah,
as long as other people are enjoying themselves, I have a lot of fun going out doing it, making other people happy. That makes my day. So.
Well, the show is the mantra of the show has always been to show the people that you're not alone. And if a goofball like myself can start this and have some great people come on the show and talk about this and try to be a bit funny and try to be instructive and just show a simple opinion of simple people, and people enjoy listening to that, all the better. It was always the point to show the people that, because especially when you're an atheist, a lot of times you come out and you feel alone. There's a lot of religions like Mormonism. You're essentially committing social suicide. You lose your friends, you lose your confidants. People turn their back on you simply because you're not convinced by their story.
Right.
And it's a terrible thing. And the atheist community is fantastic. Let's face it. It's a fantastic community. people reach out. I mean, often I reach out for people for cast, and it's you don't even have to debate with them. They don't ask you for money. It's like, yeah, I'll be more than happy to come and talk to you, and whether it's Dr. D, Ben Davis, and talk about nuclear physics, or David Fitzgerald and talk about mythicism or something like that. They're more than happy to come. And they don't ask for money. They don't ask for something flashy. They just want to come and discuss the facts. And that in itself is worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
Of all the
Absolutely.
crap you see on TV, on radio, on podcasting, so I think original content that actually has informative value and is a bit entertaining is worth a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was go on, sorry.
I said I'm just glad he restarted it.
Yeah,
I'm glad that something that, because I could tell in the months after you stopped that you always missed it.
Oh yeah,
it was something that never left the back of your mind. It was always there. It was always kind of brewing in the back of your mind. Absolutely. And now that it's back, you're happy.
Yeah,
and that makes me happy.
It's kind of funny to say, but it's actually the best part of my week. It's actually to be behind this microphone and with people I can discuss.
Speaking of which, I'm totally unprepared. I'm gonna get to work tomorrow. I work the best under pressure anyway.
I mean, honestly, that's why this is so cool that we get to do the show together, because it was honestly one of my favorite shows. I listened to several podcasts. I mean, just tons of them, and Left the Valley was one of the few that I absolutely caught every single week, no matter what, and I loved it. So
this is how
cool.
You and I became friends, Brent. Right?
Yeah.
It's right through the show. That's how we became friends. I mean, right? And you and I have never actually met in person.
No.
But you're like a brother to me. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like,
one day the borders will open and we will go to Florida because I'm going to Disney World.
Yeah. And when Nikki decides to finally kill you, I will mourn you. There's no doubt about that.
I need to meet this mythical.
It's coming up. It's definitely coming up. I'll tell you.
But the show, I mean, frankly, from a personal perspective there, this show has given me so much more than I expected. I have met and talked with intellectual giants. I have done some interviews with some legendary people.
Yeah.
And
oh yeah.
And I've met some fantastic people, whether it's like somebody like you, Brent, or even Robert Stanley, or some really, really great people. That even just like Robert, we're friends with Robert, and if Robert says something, sometimes he'll send me a text, just to check on me.
Yeah.
We've never actually met in person.
Oh yeah.
But we're friends nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I try to think of my life where it was before I did the podcasting, because it was really, throw myself in the deep and hope I swim when I did the whole podcasting. And hopefully, we're kind of dog paddling. We did it.
Yeah. I feel that. That's ours too.
I try to think of what my life would be without that. And it would be so bland. It would be so, first of all, I think it has brought me incredible amount of knowledge. Incredible amount. It's increased my debate skills. It's increased my linguistic skills. It's increased my horizons on so many levels. To just think of myself as just plain old regular Kevin before that, not even a match. It's like, no. If you had Kevin here sitting in front of this microphone right now, he would just be just drooling all over the keyboard. So,
right.
You wouldn't know it, but English isn't his first language.
I think a lot of people know that.
It's he's French, right?
It is
French. You say it, but people who don't know you here, you would not know that French is your first language.
It depends on the person.
No, not at all. There's occasions where I hear it, and I've grown up around a lot of people speaking.
Yeah, it's every Quebec. When he says about, he says a boat. Like, it's weird. I don't
You don't say boot?
It's not oot. It's oat. Like, everybody else like oot in the boot. It's not how it goes. It's out. It's oat. Oat in the boat.
Oh.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Huh? What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? I can pull
Brooch, brooch.
if it makes you guys feel better. I can put my phony French accent. Hey,
Yeah, but that doesn't work. Totally.
I am from Canada and I am here with my pet the beaver. We are talking through the microphone. I love Putin. I can fake it.
So,
And it's a rumor I was not the inspiration for Pepe Le Pew. I don't care what people say.
Hey,
ah,
Pepe Le Pew's canceled. You can't talk about him.
I don't know.
hey, yeah. What are you doing? No,
What do you feel about Pepe Le Pew being canceled?
I would have thought it would have been a long time ago. Honestly, I'm
I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence because when they say Pepe Le Pew was a bit rapey, yeah, he was.
He was hardcore rapey.
yeah.
I don't think
feel
it's
really
hardcore.
I mean, that's
yes.
the joke. The
Honestly,
joke.
from a woman's perspective of what he was doing to that cat. Or was it the skunk? Is she the skunk and he's the cat?
Yeah, he's the skunk.
And she's the cat, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what's a cat? Okay.
It's not okay.
No, I agree.
It actually gave me uncomfortable feelings as a young child to watch that.
No, and I agree with the decision, but to play devil's advocate here for half a second, at the same time, I don't think any boy my age ever saw Pepe Le Pew and say, "Oh, I'm going to do that."
Maybe it's not about the boy.
No. It's about making light. It's about making a joke because the whole thing is a joke about men doing this and that it's funny.
It isn't so much about whether or not a boy would see it and then go do it to a little girl. It's about a little girl seeing it and it making her uncomfortable because other people in her life have already done that to her. Or she has seen it in other instances, but generally it's usually because it's been done to her in some way, shape, or form. And honestly, from another female perspective, it happens to almost all of us in some way, shape, or form at least once in our life, usually several times.
Yeah, and in that perspective, I absolutely agree with you. Absolutely.
And it's making a joke out of that. Like you gotta remember what the whole point. It's making a joke.
Completely.
It's making light of really terrible behavior.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Normalizing it.
I'm going to play devil's advocate again with this here. It's like I don't want to give ammo here to create a whole new debate here, but there was a time where Bugs Bunny cartoons were absolutely awfully racist.
Absolutely.
So, but they didn't pull Bugs Bunny.
No, but they pulled all the racist part.
They pulled the racist part. So could you put Pepe Le Pew and just reinvent it?
Only if you reinvented him completely, but the whole point of Pepe Le Pew is what he does to that poor cat.
Yeah, it's kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the whole premise of his character. There's no other layer or level or...
Yeah, but Bugs Bunny started as essentially, when you used to say, "I'm such a stinker," Bugs Bunny used to say that because he would usually mock people a lot. And most of them were actually racial stereotypes. Those are the very, very early Bugs Bunny cartoons.
The early,
they
40s.
reinvented Bugs Bunny to be a bit of a wisecracker, still a bit of a stinker.
If you brought him back somewhere, I think it would be fine. And there's nothing wrong with that, but then you're still going to have the people screaming that there's been canceled and doing what they're screaming about that bunny that they're changing, the Space Jam bunny.
Oh, that's Lola Bunny.
Yeah. So they're changing her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, like he's more of a central character too, that has more mobility. Really, you can change Bugs Bunny as much as you want, and it actually would be fine.
Practice something totally different.
Well, right, and it'd be really difficult to bring him back as anything other than the rapey.
He's a French skunk, so you bring him back as that.
Yeah.
But even the idea of French skunk right there is a stereotype that really sucks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, cool. Because they're like ultra romantic, like that whole romantic concept.
Yeah, I don't mourn the loss of Pepe Le Pew. I don't.
No, you're good, man.
I could see where it could step into the absurd too. I mean, I don't know. It's just so weird that we're having these debates. About cartoon character.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, it's an old cartoon character, so we're like reevaluating it, as a modern society, and we're trying our best, as in the modern society to like recognize other people's feelings and traumas, and trying to see that, hey, making fun of guys, basically just overtly just giving sexual um what do you call it? Just passes at a woman over and over and over. That's actually pretty traumatic to a lot of women, and to make fun of it in a cartoon
Hmm.
format is just kind of shitty. You know what I mean? Like I get it. Like it's just kind of crummy to do that.
Yeah. No, I
Because
agree.
like it's
The
a
only thing
serious
changed.
thing. It's traumatic for a lot of people, and so a cartoon making light of that is you know pretty offensive.
I think the problem that arises with this is right now we don't have defined borders as to what is acceptable and what isn't, and we should. And I think at that point it just becomes, the onus basically kind of remains with the victim in that sense, right? It's like, yeah, I'm triggered by this, but at some point you also have to say there's a point where it goes into the ridicule as well, right? Um, at which point do you say, okay, you're traumatized, but then you're making a 10% of a teapot, or do you really have a point? And I think that gray area is where the struggle happens.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean
I mean,
that's
I,
true.
I remember this. There was an episode a long time ago of what was that show, like comedian the Drew Carey show,
Mhm.
and he was taken to court. He was taken to court because he drew a caterpillar trying to hump a French fry,
Mhm.
and in that episode, it triggered somebody.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I can understand where he's going with this, right? I mean, this it's ridiculous at that point. But if this was actually going to happen today, would we actually be having this kind of discussion?
That episode happened right around the time that sexual harassment became not okay in the workplace. And so that episode was actually to highlight sexual harassment in the workplace. So those kinds of things had to happen in order for people's attitudes to change. We have to show it on things like the Drew Carey show for people to realize that it's okay.
Because here's the thing, and because hear what you're saying, Kevin, and you're not wrong, to a degree, because I think a lot of us, especially in the atheist community, we're used to people having qualms that are invalid, right?
Mhm.
Like we're used to
Yes.
being like, hey, but the magical guy in the sky said, and we're like, yeah, that's bullshit. And so like we tend to think that almost everything is up for debate, and that everybody's qualms are debatable. You know what I mean? And because we're so used to some of them being just blatantly invalid, uh, just through realizing reality and understanding like, hey, you don't have actually any evidence to support this and stuff. And so we use those type of arguments for those type of claims, and so like when a woman comes about and is like, hey, Pepe Le Pew is offensive to me, we think that automatically in our head, because like the Christian talking about the fetus and how important that is, and we're like, hey, they think that is valid, so you might be just thinking that your points are valid too. And it's different when it comes to um being able to demonstrate that these things are actually issues, and here's the pain that's actually caused by this, here's the trauma that's actually caused by this particular um issue, versus, hey, I'm just looking out for the fetus, and the fetus said, well, he couldn't say anything, but I am saying that the fetus probably said that they don't want to not live or whatever, what I mean? Like they, it's like it is difficult sometimes to weigh, um, as an individual, like is valid for another person, because we're so used to people having invalid claims. But it's like when somebody
Yeah.
is a oppressed group, we and that has been sort of pushed to the corner and not listened to for so long, it's like they're probably valid. You know what I mean? If they, you know what I mean?
I absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, you could tell when you got a very valid point. For example, especially the lines of division of race, for example, and racism and stuff, and sexism. I totally get that, and those are very, very valid things. But we also live in an era today where everybody thinks their opinion is valid, no matter how ill-informed it is.
Right.
I don't disagree with that, but when you're talking about women, like it's
Oh, no, of
time to
course.
that's completely different than some of the snowflake things that I hear.
Mhm.
Of
That's
course,
the
but I
thing,
mean,
yeah.
there's still a line, right? I mean, imagine, for example, a situation. I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate again here, but imagine a situation where you had a person that is extremely, extremely prude, and it would trigger them to see you in a tank top. Well, what do we do then? Right? Do we still go and start changing the fact that you want to wear a tank top because you're affecting somebody else? This is I'm not going to say it's slippery slope because I think that's a poor argument, but it's so
Well, it's a fallacy.
ill-defined in some aspects that we're going again.
Oh, how does that correlate to women not wanting to be sexually harassed?
How is it correlate to women not wanting to be
Yeah,
sexually harassed?
how does not wanting to see someone in a tank top?
It triggers them. That's all it is. And this is an example. This is just an example. But we're just relying on the emotional impact this person is feeling by a certain situation, whether it's a cartoon, whether it's in real life. And at some point, I understand when on the right, I'm far from being a conservative, but some people on the right, when they say, "Come on," at some point you gotta stop with the politically correct, and I get that because at some point, even for me, it starts to feel like a lot.
But when it's coming to when it's specifically about this one cartoon, which is Pepe Le Pew, he needed to be canceled.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing.
There's not, and just like Bugs Bunny needed to be rewritten because racism became not okay.
And I think that Kevin, honestly, I think that a lot of that is that as humans, we like to paint things in black and white, and we got to take things by case basis, and evaluate each one, and really try to investigate the evidence that based upon each claim. And so that claim would have been very individual, right? So about the very that's very specific. And so we can investigate it upon that. And I know it's uncomfortable, and I know it's like, oh, it's all turned into this and that. And that's not really the case, though. The case is actually that, life is complicated. These things are complicated. There's more going on than just, oh, now we're canceling everything. That's just the way your brain wants to make it, because it wants things to be simple. Our brain likes simple. And so the when things get complicated, we tend to just revert back to the simple, which is generally cancel culture is all bullshit, and this is all this, everything is wrong, and this, we're just going overboard. Now we're on a slippery slope. Like, you're right. I mean, I see how, people can think that, but it's because they're trying really hard to make things simple when they're not.
Well, all this is the original question was, how do I feel about the cancellation of Pepe Le Pew? And maybe I can summarize this better. I think it would have been smarter for them not to cancel the character, but to reinvent him. The same way that they reinvented Bugs Bunny, they reinvented Lola Bunny, and even though he's a minor character, instead of canceling him out, they should have just rewritten him, saying the Pepe Le Pew from the past, of the stuff he did with the cat, that's all gone. Just reinvent the character. He's a cartoon character. I think that probably would have shut up a lot of the criticism, if there is any. I'm not even trying to.
There's a lot of criticism about them canceling Pepe Le Pew.
Really? I saw the criticism about Lola Bunny.
Cancel culture.
Oh yeah. Well, the cancel culture. Cancel culture is sort of the big issue. Now, hold on. I do have. There's some questions. Real quick. I'm so sorry, Sabrina. Go ahead. What were you saying?
It's just a new keyword. The cancel culture. It's the new keyword.
Yeah, it's the new keyword. Hey, however, I do have some questions in the chat apparently, that I just now realized, and we must have been talking about something else. I think, because I'm like, I'm kind of lost, but it says, how can we have free will if God knows everything? And then, can we have free will if God know? Yeah, it's the same question again.
Okay, well, I don't recall us talking about free will,
I
but
don't
I
either.
think that's a very good question. We've had some interviews in the past with Jerry Coyne, for example, who actually insists that we don't have such a thing as free will. That we're governed by the laws of physics, and if we were to repeat the same situation with the same laws of physics, we would make the same decision. I think he might have a point. To be quite honest, I don't know. But there are some interesting conundrum when it comes to free will. I often ask Christians, if you have free will, then there could be evil in heaven, right? And they'll say, well, no, of course not. Well, if you have free will, are you telling me when you get into heaven, they take away your free will? No, there's no evil. So if I get to heaven and I feel like I want to be a jerk one day, I have free will. I can do it, right?
Right.
And that usually stops them right there. They don't know what to say at this point.
Yeah.
Then they make some platitude.
Or they'll be like, dude, heaven's going to be so different than anything you possibly could understand that it's going to be totally like something you don't understand, which doesn't, again, it's just like it doesn't even. So apparently free will in heaven doesn't have anything to do with any logic or anything we understand from this universe, right? Which is not. You know what I mean? But I tend to agree with you honestly about free will because I'm not like I'm not fully a determinist necessarily, right? Like I think that it's a fascinating question, and I think it's interesting, but I think that we more like the point of determinism is that we don't make decisions the way that we think that we do, and I think that's accurate. Just saying, hey, we just don't. We make decisions based on our environment and on our reality at the moment when we're experiencing it. And then afterwards we go, hey, I actually made that decision because because of this X, Y, and Z. Like we we rationalize afterwards why we make decisions, even though they're just, reactions to our environment. Right?
I think Jerry Coyne has a very good point. And if you know anything about neurobiology or anything like that, you start to realize that the brain can be reprogrammed. Let's say, for example, I had a very sharp trauma. I don't know, somebody decided to plunge a knife in my head all of a sudden.
Totally plausible.
It has happened, right?
The Pepe Le Pew thing, man. Like,
we also know that once those connections are remade, an entirely different personality can emerge. So let's say, for example, something was to happen to Kevin, and like a really traumatic thing, and all of a sudden this different Kevin appears. He's let's make him angry. Let's make him violent. Okay. All of a sudden, Kevin down the road, 10 years down the road, kills somebody. Did I do it out of free will? Was it because of the reason of the accident? The new neural pathways I've established? Did I have a choice? And if I did have a choice, because I'm just reacting as a, for lack of a better word, an automaton, what are the repercussions of a justice system? Because our justice system is predicated on the idea that you do have free will. Yeah. But if we prove that you don't, that there was no choice, Kevin was going to kill at some point because it's programmed into him with his new programming now after the trauma he suffered. Can he really be guilty of the crime he's committed? Those are fascinating questions. Yeah. And I don't think we're nowhere near ready to answer those in this society.
No, we need a lot more research. And those are tough questions to answer just anyway.
Tough question. This is where the science is going.
It's fascinating. That is, and that's what I almost love about determinism is that it does kind of open up the box to try to answer those questions. Because in the legal system, you're absolutely right. Like most of the people that commit crimes, we can map back. Especially if you go like to serial killers and stuff, we can map that back to like head injuries. A lot of times, like most serial killers have gotten some sort of head injury that damaged their frontal cortex, or had like the one guy, Henry Lee Lucas, had like an eye infection and it infected his brain, because it was so close, and it's all
Yeah.
these things like, and then they went and did what they did, and then people are like, well, they were just evil, they're just evil, and just
Well,
simplify again, like they just make things super simple, and it's go, that's just
mhm.
an evil person, you know what I mean? Like, and
but
it
but this
cheapens
just
the
also
whole
shows
concept.
it also shows the how close the religion is to our everyday life, because if we were to determine all of a sudden that yes, your brain and your neural network in your brain is essentially what guides you, and you don't have a choice, you have to answer to your programming, for lack of a better term here. What does that say about a soul?
Mm.
That says nothing about it. That says the soul is such is it's there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that when you die, you just appear in heaven as the way you were. But what if you had that trauma?
Yeah.
If we go back to the example of Kevin after getting a knife in his head, is it going to be Kevin from before, or is it going to be Kevin from after?
Yeah.
Like, is the Kevin from before the knife accident destined for heaven, and the Kevin from after he's become violent and he kills somebody, is he going to hell?
It,
Is it his fault?
right. It,
Right?
it corrupted his soul. Like his soul
Yeah,
became
exactly.
corrupted.
Who corrupted the
Yeah.
soul? Is it really? Can I be held responsible for my soul because I became evil after a trauma accident?
Right. And the
Those are
answer
those are
is there's no evidence for a soul. I mean, the answer is there's no evidence for a soul, so we shouldn't just act as if there is, or act as if that thing even exists. Period. Right?
Yeah,
Because the time to believe something is when there's evidence to support that that thing exists. So the fact that we've just all sort of weirdly accepted that a soul exists is just, it's superfluous when we're talking about how people behave in questions like what you just asked. But you know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of it's difficult because it's like, that's sort of just a course people have a soul. What what do you mean?
yeah.
Like,
It's a
yeah.
integral part of the. It's only when you dig a bit deeper that you realize that your proposition doesn't make any sense. I mean, I remember telling my mother that about the idea of heaven. So what's going to happen when you're in heaven and when I die and I'm sent to hell? How are you going to enjoy your heaven at that point when your child's in hell?
Right.
How would you be able to be happy in heaven? And she had no answer for that. She basically had to come up with a stupid answer saying, "Oh no, I asked my priest and basically said God wipes your memory."
Yeah, it's
Well,
a memory wipe. Like, then
if
what the
God wipes
fuck?
your
Then
memory,
who
then is it
cares?
really you?
Yeah,
If
if
God
your
wipes your memory,
memory,
is this really you that's talking here at this point? No, not really, right? You're just a drone that in heaven, essentially.
yeah,
You're
you'd be
just a
like, there's this one, and we're gonna have to end pretty soon here after this, but there's this movie that I thought was awesome. Like, I really liked the plot of it and the way that it played out, and it had some pretty good actors in it and whatnot. And it was called Unknown, and it was
mhm.
about these people. There's an unknown that's like a bigger version, and that's not the one I'm talking about. But the unknown that I'm referring to is like these all these people just wake up in a like factory sort of thing, like a warehouse sort of factory type of thing, and none of them know how they got there. They can't remember who they are, but some of them are, they start to figure out that some of them are terrorists that were keeping people hostage, and other ones were, the hostages, right? And so they're trying to figure out who they are, if they were a hostage or if they were a hostage taker, you know? And it's a really fascinating movie, to be completely honest. But it kind of reminds me of that. Like if heaven, you just wake up and you have no idea who you are or like
Yeah.
what's going on, like why am I even here? What's going on? Like why? And that'd be really dumb. I feel like the whole point of like heaven is to like give you a sort of a pat on the back for the life that you lived here on earth, right? And so you'd kind of want to know that in heaven, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I,
I
I
mean, it's so ridiculous because we live every day thinking, of course, I'm me, I'm always going to be me. But you're nowhere near the same person you were 10 years ago
mm,
and or 20 years ago, right? And tomorrow morning I could have a stroke and not be that same person at all ever again,
right.
right? I mean, life can be very fragile and fleeting in that sense. and it can happen to all of us. But we always grow up with the sense of, I don't know, maybe a sense of ultimate individuality that somehow this is us, and then I'm so different from Sabrina that I have to be a completely different entity. And it's not a question of how my brain is wired, it's just because I have a ghost that drives the machine. Somehow that ghost goes on after I'm done.
And that makes sense from a time that that they believed in ghosts. You know what I
Oh yeah, of
mean?
course.
Like, it makes sense from that time, but it just doesn't make sense anymore. You know, clearly the brain, like, we have cases where people get brain damage and then they have 2 different personalities inside the
Hmm.
same person because of
Yeah,
brain damage. So what, do they have 2 souls?
yeah,
Because those
exactly.
2 personalities are completely different. They're completely divergent from each other. Like, it doesn't, and one might be an atheist and one might be a Christian. Like, how does that work? Do they have
Yeah.
half a soul that goes to heaven now? Like, there's so many problems with the concept of a soul, and it's
Well,
never been demonstrated to have any, reasonable, belief in reality. Like, it just doesn't comport.
I think one of the biggest lessons that you learn as a human being is, for the longest time, religion has been putting mankind onto some kind of pedestal
Hmm,
that we're somehow something great. The reality is we're nothing but a specialized primate at best.
yeah.
We're nothing great. If you step down from the pedestal and look from below where you are, we're just another animal in the animal kingdom. We're
We
not
just
even that great if you think about it. We're not stronger. We're not faster. We
yeah.
don't have better eyesight or anything like that. We just happen to be specialized in thinking.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the entire reason we've made it this far, and by the skin of our teeth half the time.
That's right. We're
So,
basically planet bacteria. That's what we are.
oh yeah,
We're a
we're just
bacteria that grows on a planet, you know?
and we're not even that old of a species. Homo sapiens only been around for about 200 to 350,000 years. We're not even that old of a species, and we already came close to being wiped once or twice. It's like it really wouldn't take much for us to disappear. We'll just take a really, really good virus, and we're done.
We're done.
And if you look at biology and the history, chances are we'll be extinct somewhere down the road too. We just have the potential to beat the odds, and that's all we have to rely on. But religions always put us on some kind of pedestal that we're something better, that we're something greater. We're not, and I think that lack of humility is the cause of so many of our mistakes.
Yeah,
And eventually, I hope that we as a species can learn to see that and
yeah,
see a real place. We're never meant to be the masters of this world. I think we're meant to be the janitors of this world.
yeah,
We're meant to take care of it because we can see the consequences of our action, and
yeah.
that comes with responsibility.
So let me ask you this real quick, and then we'll wrap up. But like, what do you think happened in the development of humans that gave us consciousness? Do you think we all started smoking weed as monkeys? I kind of think I think we were weed smoking monkeys, honestly. And then we just developed from there. It's constantly just smoking this, and now we got consciousness. What do you think?
I think you'd have to. Well, this is a very broad question. I think you'd have to define consciousness to begin with, because I think the dog is conscious. He's got a consciousness of some kind. So I don't think it's just to us, right? I think a lot of animals have a consciousness of some kind, a certain
Hmm.
self awareness. No. So what exactly are we talking about? Is it sapience? Is it sentience? What are we exactly defining by consciousness? And the fact that we have such a hard time defining it, if you can't really qualify it, it's really hard to quantify it
Yeah.
at that point.
Okay, let's say the ability to ask the question why. Why is all this happening? Why are we here? Why like the ability to ask that question?
I think one of the biggest trait that humanity has is the ability to predict the future, and the ability to see patterns, and that's given us the ability to predict the future. And this is why we ask why. Why do we do this? Because we want to see what's going to happen, and we want to know what's going to happen if we have do this or that action. How that happened, can't really say. I would edge my bet on the fact that we're a social species, And as a social species, we have the collective memory of our ancestors with us, which means we have the benefit of their experience. If you have a solitary species out there in the wild, they have to make their own mistakes, and they don't really pass that a whole lot of knowledge to the next generation, and that generation has to make those mistakes too. We have the benefit of learning from our ancestors' mistakes because we're not that great, we're not that tough, we're not that resilient. So I don't have to go out there and find out which plant is not poisonous every day. I know which one is good to eat. And I think that helped us. The fact that we're a social species helped us collectively to move forward as a species. If that answers your question.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you think, and this would be, and this is just sort of me just riffing here, but you know what would be, I feel like would be really funny if they made a movie about the development of humans and the Neanderthals were all basically just acting like animals, and then one guy was able to think and like think more deeply about things. That would be a fun movie.
Well, I think it was just a version of natural selection, right? It was
Yeah,
basically, yeah, you're playing with stick, but when you realize your sharp stick is actually better at penetrating something than one that's not sharp, it's selection, right? You just selected a more efficient way of doing it. And I think as a species we're also lazy. We're always constantly looking for an easier, better way to do things,
yeah,
right? And when we have that, so we don't have to spend as much time hunting the animal with spears, and we can just shoot it with a gun, and we can spend more time doing leisurely stuff that we enjoy. That just becomes a benefit to the species. So I think thinking happened along that same way. It was just, for lack of a better term, evolving into that sense.
yeah. It absolutely was. I think you're right. To definitely to
Yeah,
agree
right.
that we don't have much evidence, to be able to work off of to for this question specifically. But well, hey, thank you guys so much for coming on and hanging out.
That was a deep, interesting conversation we had there.
Right, we kind of got deep there. I mean, thank.
No. Well, the purpose of the show is to have a lot more fun.
Well, we're a bit more organized for that show. Um and yeah, the asshole that's been added to the Left of the Valley cast is this guy. And which I'm super psyched about because like I said, that was one of my favorite shows to listen to. So it's super cool to be able to be part of the cast
Okay,
now.
Brian, you can be honest, okay? Guys, you might not know this, but Brett has got a very extensive criminal past, and part of his community service was to help us with the show. So he's doing this to save you guys from having to endure us.
Yes, it's like a
We need
Christian.
a bunch of talent to bring into the show.
It's like a Christian courtroom drama that makes the person do
Totally.
some weird thing to get rid of their, what they did wrong. And
No power.
mine was to go be on an atheist show because I was just too Christian. That was the thing. That's the problem. And
We don't
they're like,
speak
"You
in
better."
tongues.
It seems so easy.
Speaking in tongues? Yeah, it might get us more followers.
Blah 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 blah. I can do it.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, you do it on
Suck
the
it,
Christmas.
suck
Like,
it, suck it,
yeah.
suck it, suck it, suck it, suck it, suck it,
Yeah,
suck it.
right. I guess so. Being silent night.
But
Well, thank you for having us on the show, Brent. I really appreciate that.
absolutely, and everybody should check out Left at the Valley 2.0. It is available in pretty much most of the places I want to say, right? That your podcatchers.
Not quite yet.
Not quite.
yet.
We're working on it.
It is on Spreaker and YouTube. I've kind of sent the application to iTunes and all that, but I'm not sure they've come back yet. So you'll just have to check it out there.
So, but Spreaker in iTunes or Spreaker and YouTube, right? Because I know it's on YouTube. I've seen it on there. So you can check it out.
You can find the old Left of the Valley show. The old Left of the Valley show. That one is pretty much everywhere.
Anywhere you get your podcast, yeah.
Yeah, check that one out. It's an awesome, honestly, it's an awesome catalog. I mean, they talk with everybody. I mean, you have so many awesome guests. It's absolutely incredible. So definitely check it out. But thanks again for hanging out. This has been the Happy Debating Atheist, and yeah, we're signing off. So now catchphrase sign off. Goodbye. That's it. That's the catchphrase sign off right there. Did it. All right.